So it's almost election day, and whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you gotta admit that this election cycle has left us all feeling a little baked. Baked? What's that you say? And there's maybe some historical significance with it too. Well, Christy's been in the kitchen, and she's been working on a special cake today that she hopes is gonna get my vote. So stay tuned and see exactly what we're talking about. And now, a Smoky Mountain Faith Food and Fun history lesson.
So before we start this cake in the kitchen, we gotta have a history lesson. Of course. Because have you even heard of an election cake? I know I hadn't heard of one until a few days ago. And I was like, what in the world is this? And I was like, I need to do this. This is interesting and neat. So, go ahead, history man.
History man. So the first cookbook in America was in 1796, and it was written by Amelia Simmons. The name of the book was American Cookery. Now that book also had a recipe for Johnny Cakes and pumpkin pudding, which was actually the first pumpkin pie, and spruce beer, which both non-alcoholic and alcoholic, but it literally uses spruce needles. So this had an election cake in it. Election cake, there are actually 3 different cakes in this recipe book. Election cake, the independence cake, and the federal pancake.
They also called it a great cake.
Great cake, that was in England, yes.
Yeah, well it came from England originally.
4 special occasions and different things. So special occasions, when we say that, so after the Revolutionary War, they actually called it the mustering cake, right?
Yes.
Mustering cake.
Because the men would come to muster for their...
Getting ready to go off to fight.
Yep.
Yeah, so
the ladies would make the cake.
Ladies would make cake, ladies would bake, men would eat. And then it became the election cake.
It became the election cake. It was a means of getting people to the polls.
Literally, that's...
Getting the men to the polls. The women didn't vote yet, and so what did they do?
They baked.
They baked this cake. This cake, it's got several variations. It's a spice cake with soaked dried fruits, usually in whiskey or brandy.
Very interesting.
It was a very expensive cake back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
It was very special. Election day was big time.
Yeah.
Back then, and they celebrated it. So I just thought it was rather interesting. That was one way they kind of got people to come to the polls. Can you imagine if Donald and Kamala just stood outside your polling place with this cake and said, "Come vote. We'll give you cake."
Kamala would say something like, "Cake? That's great. Come to the polls." And Trump would say something like, "We're gonna bake cakes. We're gonna bake them all day. We're gonna make them great. They're gonna be bigly cakes. We love them. Love to have you have a little slice of Americana." Isn't that what we say?
And you're gonna make America cake again.
Well, Make America Cake Again. That's interesting that you brought that up, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Make America Cake Again.
So, Make America Cake Again was a legit...
That's funny. Yes.
Make America Cake Again is a legit hashtag from the Levain Bakery in Asheville. In the 2016 election, they brought back the election cake.
Yeah.
And they made a hashtag, Make America Cake Again.
Make America Cake Again.
So they were making the election cakes back in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly but surely, the election cake is coming back.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm going to do my part in bringing back the election cake tradition, and I'm going to make it for y'all. And
even though we've already voted.
We have already voted, but you know what? If you haven't voted, get out there. Get out the vote.
Do your patriotic duty.
So, just a quick note about this election cake. The original recipe was meant to feed masses of people.
Yeah, tell us that.
It contained 30 quarts of flour, 10 pounds of butter, 14 pounds of sugar, 12 pounds of raisins, 8 dozen eggs, a pint of wine, a quart of brandy, 4 ounces of cinnamon, 4 ounces of coriander, 3 ounces of ground allspice, and then you made the recipe. They would use back then flat beer to leaven the cake.
Because it had yeast.
Right. This is a yeast cake. It is like sort of a yeasty, bready, cakey bread. But anyway, we're going to get in the kitchen and make it, and then we'll come back and try it.
Oh, wait a minute. So does that mean that if you had a band on election night for your victory party, you would invite the yeasty boys?
Oh my goodness. I gotta go bake a cake, y'all.
Yes.
And then we're gonna come back and try it. To make this colonial era cake, we're gonna need quite a few ingredients. We're gonna start out with some dried fruit, equaling to about 1.5 cups. You can use a combination of golden raisins, dates, cherries, or whatever kind of dried fruits you would like. You're also going to need a package of active dry yeast, an orange for zesting, 2 eggs lightly beaten. We are going to use a little bit of Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey. We want this to be authentic, and they would have used a whiskey or a brandy back then. For our spices, we'll need 1 tablespoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of ground ginger, 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 1/4 teaspoon of allspice, and 1/8 teaspoon of cloves. We're also going to use a teaspoon of vanilla, a little bit of sugar, a cup of buttermilk, 1.5 cups of brown sugar, 2 sticks of unsalted butter, some ground nuts of your choice if you want. We're using pecans. So for the glaze, we're going to use 2 cups of powdered sugar, 4 tablespoons of lemon juice, and a splash of vanilla. And for the batter, we're using 3 cups of self-rising flour. Our first step before we do anything is to take our dried fruits. I've got the golden raisins, the dried cherries, and the dates, and we're going to chop up the dates a little bit smaller because we don't need those big old giant dates in our cake. We want small pieces, of course. So we're going to get all of those into the bowl, equal to about 1.5 cups of the dried fruit. Whatever combination you want to use is fine. And then we're going to get them in there and use our whiskey in the bowl. About 1/2 cup is about what I used here. And we're going to let those soak in that whiskey for about, a couple of hours. While our fruit is soaking, we're going to go ahead and get our eggs lightly beaten. We're going to grind our pecans. This is an old grinder from my mom, and it just does a nice fine grind on the pecans. And then we're going to zest this orange because that is going to add some amazing citrus flavor to this cake. After several hours, our fruit has soaked up that whiskey, and we're going to start our cake. I've got 1 package of the active dry yeast here. I'm putting it in the bowl of my stand mixer, and then I'm going to add 2/3 cup of hot or warm water. You don't want it too hot. Basically, if you could touch it with your finger and it not scald you, that's probably warm enough, or, kind of like a baby's bottle. No more than 105 degrees is what you want that. And we're going to let that sit in the bowl and let that yeast get nice and bubbly. And I'm going to go ahead and add my spices into my flour there. That is self-rising flour. Use a whisk to incorporate those spices all into the flour. It's been about 10 minutes, and my yeast and water and sugar look like they are ready. They're a little bit cloudy, a little bit bubbly. That's what you want to see. And we're going to add in 1 cup of the flour and spice mixture right into the mixer there. Once that cup of flour has incorporated well, we're going to add in our 2 sticks of unsalted butter. Of course, that has been at room temperature, so it will mix well. And we're going to turn up the speed of the blender just a little bit and let that butter cream into the flour and yeast mixture. Here we're adding in our 1 cup of buttermilk. Here we're adding in our vanilla as well as our orange zest. It's time to add in our 1.5 cups of brown sugar. You can use light or dark, whatever your preference is. I just don't recommend white sugar. And now we're adding in our lightly beaten eggs. It's time to add the rest of the flour and the spices, just a little bit at a time, as the mixer begins to incorporate that all together. It's time to add in our ground nuts if you're going to use them. And then with the remaining flour and spices, we're going to toss our soaked dried fruits in the rest of that flour and kind of mix that around and get that fruit with some flour coating it so that the fruit does not sink to the bottom of the cake. We're going to carefully fold in that soaked fruit into our batter now that it is finished mixing, and just get that in there so that it's nice and incorporated, nice and even. You can use any kind of pan you like, but I'm using the star pattern for a bundt pan. It's a Nordic ware pan, and I'm spraying it with my Pam baking spray. You want to make sure to get every nook, cranny, and crevice of that pan so that your cake will release. Notice I've got a really nice coating there, and then I'm going to go ahead and put my batter into the pan evenly around all the sides. Once it's in there, I'm going to drop and kind of even out my dough by dropping it onto the counter a couple of times. And then I'm going to put it in my oven with the light on for about an hour to raise. And then it is going to bake at 350 for about 50 minutes. And we are finished. And as you can see, we did actually end up with 2 cakes, so you could split this recipe in half, but we're going to freeze one for Christmas and eat one for Election Day. While our cakes are cooling, I'm going to make the glaze. It's very simple. It's 2 cups of powdered sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla, and 4 tablespoons of lemon juice. We'll just whisk all that goodness together to make our glaze. As soon as our cakes are cool enough, we're going to put the glaze on the cakes. Look at that. That is so pretty. We are just going to run some of that glaze over the top of the cake. It'll soak in and it will be delicious. And here is our finished Election Day cake. It smells absolutely wonderful and it looks beautiful, and we are super excited to give it a try. Behold the election cake.
Yes.
And it smells so good. I guess it probably would with whiskey and dried fruit.
Yes.
And all of the, most of it smells good.
Yeah, most says
Did
that's
you
right.
vote? Are you a Demodog or a Republidog? No comment.
He says, I don't know. He says, but life's been rough.
Alright, so I am anxious to try this cake because it smells so good. I can even smell the orange zest that we put in there. But I'm going to let you go first because I'm curious about what you will think of it. Yeah. Go.
So, if this is the cake that they made when Marie Antoinette said, let them eat cake, then you know what the crowd would have said.
Make America cake again?
No, that was in France. You know what they would have said?
What?
If we don't get cake, it's yeast or famine.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You right now?
All right. Wow. I like the consistency of the cake, I can tell you that.
It's more cakey than bready, but maybe that's just my recipe. I took this recipe from 5 or 6 recipes and decided what I thought was best.
Oh, man.
What are your thoughts?
You know what it's like?
What?
It's like a mix. It's like the best fruit cake on steroids you've ever had.
If you like fruit, if you don't like fruit cake, what would you say?
No, if you didn't like fruit cake, you're not gonna like that.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. You might, but I don't know.
See, I like fruit cake, so I can't really say, but I'm gonna give it a bite.
I don't know. That might be doing a disservice to fruit cake or to this cake. It might be. You see what you think.
Momo thinks he's getting some.
Mama was like, I'm ready for cake.
Oh, wow. Wow is always my initial.
But isn't that what you're thinking?
Okay. Yes. The flavor is kind of fruit cakey, but the texture is not.
Yes. Yes. The texture is very fluffy and airy and kind of reminds me of almost like a
Cakey bread?
like a yeast donut.
Yeah.
It has that same consistency. It really does.
But those fruits
Oh,
are yummy.
wow.
And that lemon glaze,
Yeah. The lemon glaze just takes it over the top. That really does it right there.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, it's a good cake.
And it's not too much spices.
No, but you can tell it has a spice cake undertone.
I'm about that.
Oh,
I'm actually really about that.
on November 5th, vote yes on election cake. It would get my vote. You have persuaded me.
That's really good.
You have persuaded me. I'm going to take
So even if
another bite.
you didn't like fruit cake, I think you would like that.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
could use like dried apricots instead of dates. Any kind of dried fruit, pineapple. You could do anything you really wanted, and it would be good.
Man, that's good.
Figs.
You could use figs if you could find them. I couldn't find figs, or I would have used figs.
Figure
but,
an older thing, so it definitely would go good with
Yes.
election cake.
But I had never heard of election cake, and wow, that's yum. I mean, it would also be good for holidays.
Yeah, for
Thanksgiving's
Christmas,
coming.
Thanksgiving.
We actually had sort of Thanksgiving here tonight with the kids and everybody.
That was pretty great.
And it was sort of a last minute, everybody just ended up here and we ate a turkey dinner and
We had a good time.
it was a good time.
Yeah.
So baby came and very nice. It was the first time the baby had met our dogs.
So we had the grandbaby and both kids.
We're not getting any, sir.
We had the grandbaby and both kids.
We did.
And the son-in-law, and we had John.
John's here.
So we had the whole fam. Whole fam was here tonight. We sat around the table. We'll show you a little bit of that.
I would totally make America cake again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
Oh, I didn't mention this. This actually ended up making 2 cakes.
yeah, the recipe that you
Yeah.
had, yes.
So if you wanted just the one, you could probably cut that in half very easily. But we have a whole nother cake, and I think it'll get eaten too because it's very good.
But I do want to say something about this cake though.
Okay.
I know you made it in a bundt pan, right?
Mhm.
You may have made it in a bundt pan,
No.
but for me that's a home run.
Oh gosh.
Bundt home
I
run.
get you.
Yeah.
You can make it in a loaf pan, but I wanted to be fancy.
This is like the World Series of cakes.
Well, okay. So, get out the vote.
Get out the vote.
If your candidate wins, celebrate with cake. If your candidate loses, you can
Celebrate with cake.
You can drown your sorrows.
Drown your sorrows in cake.
So,
Exactly.
so you have a day left. And anyway, that all being said, we are praying for our country and
Absolutely.
whatever the Lord's will may be.
And Jesus is king no matter what.
Yeah, you know, my shirt says normal isn't coming back, but Jesus is really. That is true. That is the bottom line.
That is true.
So, anyway, cake. Cake makes it all better.
Well, I know how I want to close this out.
Okay.
If you like the video, at Yeast, give us a thumbs up.
Connor's behind the camera going.
He really is. Our producer tonight is like, oh, really? He's like, Dad, I can't do this with you right now. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and of course, make sure to hit that notification bell, ringy dingy, or we'll call it the Liberty Bell.
Ring that Liberty Bell.
Yes.
Let freedom ring, y'all.
Let freedom ring.
Freedom ring.
By hitting the notification bell so that you know every time new content is posted from us. And for now.
He's Brooks. I'm Christy.
Oh, how about that? We did a little switcheroo on you. That's called a bait and switch right there. That's a politician's tactic. So, well, for now, we just want to say, God bless you guys. We love you. And
if you haven't been to vote yet,
make sure you get out the vote.
Tomorrow and vote for whomever you feel is best.
And then have some cake.
Have some cake.
God bless you guys. We love you. And we can't wait to show you what's next.
Bye-bye.